Well, good evening, brethren. It's good to see you all. And we certainly would like to cordially invite you to join us for our 12th annual Festive Board at Spindletop Hall in Lexington, Kentucky. If you have not already done so, I encourage you to check out the website, rubiconmasonicsociety.com/conference 2024. Go there. All of the details will be explained to you. And of course, if you have any questions whatsoever, we'll be here to answer them for you at any time we possibly can. Look forward to seeing you there. It will be an absolutely phenomenal event, phenomenal conference. A lot of preparation going into this one. You definitely don't want to miss it if your schedule will allow it. So, brethren and friends, thank you for joining us this evening. On behalf of the Rubicon Masonic Society, we are, of course, and always happy and excited to be with you once again as we gather as men and Masons outside of our lodges to learn a little bit more about Freemasonry, a little bit more about ourselves, and how to utilize the tools of our great craft within the everyday lives of our journeys. This episode marks our 61st episode of Virtual Masonic Education discussions since we started in 2020. And this series is, of course, entitled 21st Century Conversations on Freemasonry. For those of you who are returning visitors to our education, of course, thank you so much for your continued support. We appreciate it greatly. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we welcome you. We hope you enjoy the education and discussions tonight enough to want to come back in the future. And finally, to anyone watching this recorded video online, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel so you never miss a monthly episode of our Masonic education. And if you have any interest in joining us during a live presentation, if you are a Mason, please RSVP at rubiconmasonicsociety.com/RSVP. Brethren, a special thanks always goes out to the William and Ware Lodge of Research, Lexington Lodge No. 1, and of course, the brethren and honorary members of the Rubicon Masonic Society. Without your support, we would not be able to do what we do on a regular basis. Alongside the executive officers of Rubicon, Worship Brother John Bizak, Worship Brother Dan Kimball, Worship Brother Alan Martin. I believe we also have Worship Brother John Sissel and Brother Jerry Johnson. Hopefully they're with us tonight as well. We thank you, and we will now proceed with the business of the evening. Worshipful Brother Alan Martin, will you please do the honor, sir, of delivering an opening devotion?
Brothers, let's pray. Grand Architect of the universe, we ask for your blessing as we gather this evening to continue our educational series and our exploration of Freemasonry. We ask for your guidance and wisdom as we endeavor to live our lives as just and upright men. We ask that you bless us with the ability to always act with poise, dignity, and as gentlemen as we labor to become better men. These things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.
Thank you, Worship Brother. Brothers, our virtual Masonic education aims to help us to become better men, always devoted to our families, our faith, and our country. May we all come together tonight to learn, to subdue our passions, to discipline our minds, and to improve ourselves through the tools of Freemasonry. Any opinions expressed during this virtual education will be those of the presenter or participant. They do not necessarily reflect the views of any lodge or Grand Lodge or the Rubicon Masonic Society. By participating, you do consent to our full disclaimer, which can be found at rubiconmasonicsociety.com/disclaimer. A few more pieces of protocol, and then we'll jump right into the education. As you know, these are not tiled meetings. Masons and non-Masons are welcome to attend and participate, so please always be mindful that anything discussed this evening should be suitable for Masons of all degrees as well as non-Masons. Gentlemanly manners are to be expected at all times. Please, no eating, no alcohol, no smoking, no foul language, no discussion of politics or religion. We recommend that the attire for each meeting is coat and tie. Please type your name and any appropriate Masonic title or location under your video to identify yourself to others here this evening. If you're not a Mason, no problem. Please simply type guest after your name. Please enable your video camera so we can see you. Please reduce background noise, turn off other programs, and please always be patient should any technical difficulties occur. Brother, tonight we have a special treat for you. Worship Brother S. Brent Morris will be discussing the Taxil Hoax. Worship Brother John Bizak, will you please do the honors of introducing our special guest?
I will. It'll be my pleasure. Thank you. Worshipful Brother Morris's Masonic resume covers a gamut of Masonic affiliations from coast to coast and on both sides of the Atlantic. In 1999, he was named 33rd degree Grand Cross by the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction. By the turn of the 21st century, he was world renowned in Freemasonry, having served as the Scottish Rite Journal's first book review editor, founder of the Scottish Rite Research Society, and his scholarly journal, Heredom, and authoring several books and countless articles about the craft. With a PhD in mathematics from Duke University, his first career as a cryptologist was with the National Security Agency at Fort Meade. He's a fellow of the Philately Society, 83rd member of the Society of Blue Friars, where he served as the Society's Grand Abbot. He was named an honorary member of the Rubicon Masonic Society in 2023. Worshipful Brother Morris is considered one of the foremost experts in the field, and he's been referred to as the most interesting man in Masonry. Tonight, his presentation is about the spurious 1890s Taxil Hoax. Brother Brent, we welcome you to our 61st episode and your third appearance presentation at our monthly education series since 2021. And the floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
I think my microphone is on. Can you hear me out there?
We can hear you, yes.
Excellent. I'm delighted to be here. If you have run into any anti-Masonic publishing on the internet or in writing, or you run into a anti-Mason, it's very likely you have heard the quote allegedly attributed to Albert Pike, what I tell you, brothers, and then you can relate to brothers of the 32nd, the 30th, and the 31st and the 30th degree. And then he goes on to explain how Freemasons worship Lucifer, not Adonai, and Lucifer is the true God of light, and on and on. And this has an interesting story behind it, if it didn't come up so often in such hurtful ways. But I think it's interesting, and I've got a presentation that I call The Pope and the Pornographer, which I named in such a way that I wanted it to be a sexy title to attract your attention. So if the moderator is ready to give me screen control, I've got my first slide up.
You should be able to take full control, Worshipful Brother.
All right. Now, can you see the slide that says The Pope and the Pornographer?
Nope, not
Okay,
yet.
then I'm not quite sure what I should be doing next.
Okay, so you'll want to go down and click the share button.
Share button down here at the bottom.
It's part of your...
Here we go, share screen. And it's at times like this, I think to myself, where is my 12-year-old grandson who could help me out with this?
Now,
Or
this
my
is our
10-year-old granddaughter who could
first
help him out.
episode. This is our 61st
Here we go, share
episode.
screen. There we go. We'll
There.
share this, and then I'll put it in full screen mode.
Perfect.
There we go, The Pope and the Pornographer. So there are two main characters in this story. And the first one we'll talk about is the Pope. And the Pope in question is Leo XIII. There's several things to know about him. He lived from 1810 to 1903, 93 years old at the time of his death. Vincenzo Pecci. He had the third longest pontificate. He was the transition from the 19th century to the 20th century. His pontificate lasted from 1878 to 1903, 25 years, third longest in the Roman Catholic Church. He also was the oldest pope at the time of his death, 93 years old. And he was the first to have no secular power over the papal states. And that's I think part of what caused him to get upset at the Masons. And there was over a 20-year period, Italy was united into the country we know today. And you can see from the map there, the Kingdom of Sicily, the Kingdom of Sardinia, the Papal States, the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, and so on. These were all autonomous nations that were glued together. And part of the movement was by Giuseppe Garibaldi. Well, in 1850, the Pope takes control over Rome. Garibaldi moves to New York City. It's not working out the way he wanted. Almost 20 years later, he returns to Italy, still working for Italian unification. And he tries to add the Papal States to United Italy, and that fails. And then in 1870, Rome and the Papal States are annexed by the Kingdom of Italy. So now they have achieved essential unification of the Italian peninsula. Vatican City is still under the control of the Pope, and it's treated diplomatically as an independent nation. Now, there's a picture of Giuseppe Garibaldi, 75 years old at the time of his death. He's known as one of Italy's fathers of the fatherland. And twice he attempted to add Rome and the Papal States to a united Italy. He was also a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason and Grand Master of the Grand Orient of Italy. Now, if you've ever checked into the number of Masonic bodies claiming control over Italy, there are more Masonic bodies than I have fingers. But there's regular Masonry, there is Grand Orient Masonry, there's mixed Masonry, every flavor you can imagine in the country of Italy. Now, on April 20th, 1884, Leo XIII issued his infamous bull, In Humanum Genus. And it is his bull against Freemasonry, one of several that have been issued by the Vatican. And he starts out by saying the race of man is separated into two diverse parts. One is led by God, and the other is led by Satan. Simple division of the world. The partisans of evil seem to be combining together, led on or assisted by the Freemasons. So he's not sure whether we are the leaders or whether we're just the assistants, but he knows we're involved. Now, you can see that he's still upset that the pontiff was first, for specious reasons, thrust out from the bulwark of his liberty and of his right to civil princedom. So he had he was a prince in Italy. He had a territory that he controlled, and that was taken away by the unification of Italy. And then he decides he's going to make a list of things that the Freemasons have done that are bad. And this is an instance when it really pays off to pay attention to what someone is saying about you. What have the Freemasons done that are bad? Well, they declare the church and state ought to be separated, completely disunited. There is independent bodies governed independently. They have no reaction other than those polite relations as neighbors. Freemasons believe that states should be constituted without any regard for the laws and precepts of the church. That the government of your secular government should not have any give any particular notice to the Roman Catholic Church. And in this case, when he talks about the church, he's talking about the Roman Catholic Church. But ignore the Jews, ignore all the Protestant factions. The government should be separate, the Freemasons say. They also say marriage is a commercial contract that can be revoked by the will of those who made them. Freemasons believe that. They don't believe that the church should be, have any control over marriage, and that upset the Pope. And then talk about something radical. Each one must be left at liberty to follow, when he comes of age, whatever religion he may prefer. So that means if you want to be a Presbyterian and I want to be a Lutheran, cool. If I want to be a Catholic, that's fine too. That's completely left up to us. Everyone is free to follow any religion they want. And then there are doctrines of politics. And now he lists some heavy charges against the Freemasons. All men have the same right. Each one is naturally free. No one has the right to command another. Now, that doesn't mean that in the civil government that you can't be issued commands by the civil government that's created or dissolved by the people. But I have no natural right to control you. And according to this, therefore, power is held by the command of the people. Talk about a radical thought. The power of the government rests in the people's authority. And when the popular will changes, rulers may be lawfully deposed. We see that happening all the time. Whenever there's an election, we may decide that we're tired of the rulers and elect more rulers. And there's no, in the condition of religion, there's no reason why one should have precedence over another. They're all viewed equal in the eyes of the state. This is some pretty radical stuff. And this is what the Freemasons are charged with. And have been very happy to say to anti-Masons, yep, he got it right. He hit those points, a nail on the head. And a few weeks after he came out with Inhumanum Genus, the humor magazine Puck, on May 7th, 1884, put out a marvelous political cartoon. And there's the Pope and the Grand Master fighting each other. And you can see in the background, or you can see the Pope is waving a crozier, and he says, you're a humbug and you dupe the people. And then in the background is a Knight Templar holding a banner that says, you're another. And then if you notice down in the bottom in the center is Puck, the imp, and he's applauding the fight as it goes on. The Grand Master is wearing that tall pointed hat. He has 3 ribbons from it. I don't know if you can read them, but they say Jubilah, Jubilo, and Jubilo. So those are a delightful political cartoon. So there's the Pope, and he issues Inhumanum Genus, this encyclical against the Freemasons. Now, how do we get a pornographer into this story? Well, that's to me where it becomes interesting. We're going to talk about a gentleman known popularly by his nom de plume, Léo Taxil. His real name is Marie Joseph Gabriel Antoine Diogon Pages. He lived from 1854 to 1907. That's 53 years of age when he passed away. At the age of 5, he was placed in a Jesuit cemetery. Seminary. That's what happens when you have too big a vocabulary. That's how I like to explain it instead of just getting old. And he became disillusioned. And I guess that if at age 5 you're told that you're going to train to be a priest, and that is the point of all your education and everything that you're doing, then you might indeed become disillusioned. And he didn't like religion. So what he did is he started making his living by writing pornographic books. He wrote the Amusing Bible, the Debaucheries of a Confessor, and you can look at the cover of Les Débauches d'un Confesseur. I apologize for my French. I butcher the pronunciation. I read it modestly, but not even modestly well. I know enough French that I can find a bathroom if I'm lost in Paris. Excusez-moi, où est la toilette, s'il vous plaît? That's an important sentence to learn if you're going to be visiting any Francophone country. So there are 2 of the books that he wrote, 1882, 1883. He was quite the author. I mean, he ground out writings on almost any topic. There are 2 more books, The Life of Jesus on the left, and then The Mistresses of the Pope. And you can see on the cartoon on the cover of The Mistresses of the Pope, published in 1884, and that's the year of the Humanum Genus. You can see it's quite pornographic for something that would be published in the late 1900s. So that was quite a dramatic thing. He gets sued by the Pope for defamation, loses the case. He's excommunicated. The Pope is going to show him. Now, what do we know about Léo? His real name from 54 to 1907, tried and acquitted for insulting a religion recognized by the state. So they weren't able to hold that charge against him. In 1881, he joined the Temple of Honor French Lodge. It's in Paris, under the Grand Orient de France. And to me, what is very, very interesting is not that he was a Freemason, but that he was expelled after receiving the first degree. Now, I don't know what he did. That would be very interesting to find out if there are any records of why Léo Taxil was expelled. But after receiving only the first degree, he is expelled from Masonry. And that's all the exposure to Masonry he needs to do all of his writings. So this is 1881, 3 years before the encyclical. In 1885, he converts back to Catholicism. He has a confession with a priest. He is absolved of his sins, and then he becomes a practicing Catholic. And this is much to the dismay of his secular friends who said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? We thought you were one of us." But he's now a devout Catholic. And he knows that Pope Leo XIII is really concerned about the Masons and how they are the influence they're having on civil society. So he starts writing anti-Masonic books because he was a Mason himself, albeit only a first degree Mason. But you don't say that. You just say, I am a Mason, or I was a Mason. And his first books was Brothers of the 3 Points, or the 3 Point Brothers. And that's his first anti-Masonic book. And he starts out rather mildly in his anti-Masonic writings, relating mostly factual, mostly truthful stories about the Masons. But whenever something happens that could be given a negative spin, he gives it a negative spin. So the story is just a little more negative than it should be. Now, in 1887, just 2 years after converting back to Catholicism, he has an audience with the Holy Father. And he knows the Holy Father is concerned about Masonry, and he says, "I will write more books and reveal more of the truth to you." So that's 1887. And then we get The Devil in the 19th Century. This is written by Dr. Battaglia, who is a pseudonym of a friend of Taxil's. And one of Taxil's techniques is to get someone else to agree to be the author of a book. Or if he can't get anyone to agree to be the author, he'll just invent a person. But Battaglia is one of his friends. And in this book, published in 1892, now this is 8 years after the encyclical, this is 7 years after he converts back to Catholicism, he introduces Diana Vaughan, and she becomes very significant to this story. He also tells a tale about a winged crocodile-shaped demon who flies into a room where the Masons are meeting, and he plays the piano. So his stories have gotten to this point that you have winged crocodile-like demons playing the piano to entertain the Masons. I think the Rubicon Society should consider that as the entertainment at one of their annual meetings. That would get a good crowd. And then he reveals the existence of Palladian Masonry. And this is the real deal. These are the people that really run Masonry. So most of the Masons you're going to meet on the street are not members of the inner circle, but the Palladian Masonry pulls the strings, controls everything. And it's headed by Albert Pike in the United States, in Charleston, South Carolina at that time is where the Supreme Council was meeting. And the bishop in South Carolina goes and checks out the address, and it's an empty lot, and he travels to Rome, and he tells the Pope, "I think you're being duped. There's nothing, there's no building there where this Palladian Masonry is supposed to be." And the Pope gives him instructions to shut up and not tell anyone else. And Taxil continues. Now here's a picture of Diana Vaughan, and what do we know about her? Well, she's born in Kentucky, so I think this is entirely appropriate to discuss her at the Rubicon Society. She's a Kentucky girl. She is related to Thomas Vaughan, the Rosicrucian alchemist. If you've read anything about English mysticism, English Rosicrucians, the name Thomas Vaughan is going to show up in your reading. And she was betrothed to Satan at birth. So when she was born, her father, who was a follower of Thomas Vaughan, who was himself a Satanist, betrothed Diana Vaughan to Satan, and the two are going to marry. But then, wouldn't you know it, Diana Vaughan has a conversion experience, and she goes into hiding because she knows the Satanists are trying to capture her so that her wedding to Satan can be fulfilled. But she's decided that Taxil is a good guy and she can talk to him. So the only information we get about Diana Vaughan comes into Taxil and he shares it with others. Well, this has people on the edge of their seats. They can't wait for the next book, for the next revelation. Where is this? What's going to happen to this poor woman? Can't anyone protect her from the evil Masons and the Satanists that are out to get her? And then here comes the Luciferian quote. It's from the book La Femme and l'Enfant dans la Franc-Maçonnerie Universelle, Woman and Child and Universal Freemasonry. And you can see the picture down there of Satan with his arms around a woman. Presumably this would be Diana Vaughan. And here's the quote. It's the author of the book, by the way, is an anti-Mason, Abel Clarine de la Rive. Albert Pike, as sovereign pontiff of universal Freemasonry, addressed to the 23 confederated supreme councils of the entire world these diabolic instructions. And here is the quote that you have probably read if you've looked for much anti-Masonic material. You may repeat to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. Masonic religion should be by all of us initiates of the higher degrees maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. If Lucifer were not God, would Adonai and his priests calumniate him so? Now, something an American Mason should immediately notice, and that is that 32nd, 31st, and 30th degree Masons are treated differently. They're in a special class. Now that sounds very much like the way the Scottish Rite or the Rose Croix is run in England. That's very much the way it's run in Europe, and that is the 31st, 30th, and 32nd are very, very exclusive. Most members only make it to the 18th degree, and then achieving the 32nd degree is as rare as the KCCH is in the Southern jurisdiction. So that ought to be the first little niggling thing you say to yourself, well, that's an odd statement to make. Well, then it goes on. There's also, with that quote, an insignificant footnote. And it's so insignificant, people don't bother to quote it. But it says it was the sister Diana Vaughan that Albert Pike charged to carry his encyclical to Paris during the Universal Exposition. So that right there directly ties the Luciferian quote to Diana Vaughan, whom we know is an invention, a creature of Taxil's mind. There it is, but the footnote is usually not included with the quote. Now, here is something that is significant. In a Parisian newspaper, Le Frondeur, and Le Frondeur, I think, it's for me, it was difficult to translate. It's a gadfly. A frondeur is someone who's constantly picking, poking, bothering, turning things up. And the headlines reads, 12 years under the banner of the church, the fumistry, the hoax of Palladianism. And there's a picture of Léo Taxil. And there is a complete exposure of what he did. And what was happening is the more he wrote about Diana Vaughan and the larger his audience became, the more and more people started picking holes in the story. Just as American Masons would immediately notice the special preference given to the 31st, 32nd, and 33rd degree, the French readers looked at this, looked at what Taxil was writing and said, there's something odd about this. We can trust us. We can protect Diana. We'd like to talk to her in person. And Taxil always said, no, You can't talk to her. She only talks through me. Finally, it had reached the point that he was not able to maintain the hoax any longer. So he said, I am going to introduce Diana Vaughan at the Geographic Hall in Paris. And I invite the press, the prelates, the public, all to come meet Diana Vaughan, and I'll tell you her story. So they all show up. The auditorium is packed. He walks on the stage and says, Diana Vaughan, c'est moi. I am Diana Vaughan. And then he explains how he created this hoax and how he fooled everybody. And so the talk is given on April 19th of 1897. He explains everything. Explains how he created the hoax, what Diana Vaughan did. And turns out Diana Vaughan was a typist hired by Taxil to work in his office or to help him produce manuscripts. And he used her name with her permission. He talked to her about it, I understand. It's claimed. And there is a riot or a near riot, and Taxil escapes the hall. Now, if you would like to read a translation of his confession, go to the homepage of the Scottish Rite Research Society, scottishRiteResearch.org, I think, or srrs.org. Google Scottish Rite Research Society. Go to the homepage. It's one of a few articles that are available to download at no cost. We thought this was too valuable a document to not have there. We translated it. We think it's a good translation. We think it's a fair translation. The entire article is available for you to download and read in its full glory. And so it was published in Heredom Volume 5 in 1997. So if you have a set of Heredom on your bookshelves, you've got the translation right there. If your lodge or your Grand Lodge library has a set of Heredom, go to Volume 5. And if you don't want to do that, just find the Research Society homepage. So now the hoax is blown wide open. What happens after this? Well, there's another picture of Leo. You can see he's got his horns and his tail, and it has the satanic fires, the hellish fires around him. He was forced to leave Paris. He was persona non grata in Paris. He was excommunicated again. Can you believe that? Leo XIII has no sense of humor. He excommunicates him the first time for the pornographic biography. Leo XIII has a pornographic biography among Taxil's writings. And now poor guy gets excommunicated again. I don't know how many people managed to do it twice, but our boy Leo did. He then reissued the Amusing Bible, and he did no more big hoaxes. You really only get to do something like this once. Some of the people are going to say, boy, that was pretty good. You pulled one over us, clever you. Second time you come up with a big story, you're going to say, wait a minute, the last time you had a big story, we got burned. I'm not sure I'm satisfied. Give me a little more information. So he had one chance. Boy, he played it for everything it was worth. Now, here comes a very important fact. Abel Clarin de Larive, and he was the author, if you recall, Woman and Child in Universal Freemasonry, and that's the one that has the quote in it. And he published a magazine called Freemasonry Unmasked, La Franc-Maçonnerie démasquée, and he was the editor. And in April 1897, so just a few days after Taxil has revealed everything, he says, we have always been careful to publish special articles concerning palladism. I'm frankly not sure how to pronounce the word, and Diana Vaughan. We're now giving in this issue a complete list of these articles, which can now be considered as not having existed. So he didn't like the Masons, and he continued for the rest of his life to write anti-Masonic articles, but he had the integrity when he realized he'd been duped and he had been sharing false information to say, assume none of that existed. They pulled one over on me. And that also means that quote in his book that had the footnote that they don't attribute, the anti-Masonic quote that's usually attributed to Albert Pike, doesn't exist anymore, according to de la Rive. Now, what happens? Well, Edith Starr Miller, an American lady who marries a English gentleman, she's now Lady Queenborough. She's known either as Lady Queenborough or Edith Starr Miller. She publishes a book in 1933 called Occult Theocracy. What she does in this book is she exposed occult religions and other secret societies. This is for the good of the Christian community. You need to know the evil that these organizations do. They're not as mild and as sweet as you might think they are. They're really evil people. And she includes the Pike quote that was renounced by de la Rive. She repeats the quote, and she doesn't include the footnote. Footnote is not there at all, and that's the one that definitely ties it back to Diana Vaughan. And then in 1980, it's reprinted by the Christian Book Club. And some of you may recall that in the early 1990s, a motion was put on the floor at the Southern Baptist Convention to disfellowship all Freemasons. Well, the world started coming apart because in many Southern Baptist congregations, Freemasons were leaders of the church. They were on the board of deacons. They were big contributors to the church. And now they're about to be disfellowshipped. So the church is upset. The Masons, of course, are upset. If you're a Southern Baptist, you certainly would not want to be disfellowshipped. And all of this is much of the attacks against the Freemasonry goes back to the false Albert Pike quote from Occult Theocracy, which is from Woman and Child in Universal Freemasonry, dropping the footnote. I did some Google searches. You can see just a few weeks ago. When you put in the terms Pike and Lucifer, you get 721,000 hits. When you put in the terms Freemasonry and Lucifer, 589,000 hits. Pike and Lucifer and worship gets you 551,000. Lucifer and God of Masonry gets 549,000. And then when you put in Taxil and confession, you get 28,600. Kind of disappointing. The Taxil's confession, which I think is really an amusing story, doesn't get as many hits as the others. And you could play this game yourself. Put in anything you think that would tie Freemasonry to Albert Pike and Lucifer and so on, and see how many hits you got. Now, I'll share with you what was an interesting experience I had while all of this is going on. In State College, Pennsylvania, where the University of Pennsylvania is located, two of the congregations up there, an Orthodox Presbyterian congregation and a Christian and Missionary Alliance congregation, got together and decided that they were going to disfellowship all the Freemasons in their congregations. So they did that. They were disfellowshipped. And then they contacted every other church in State College and said, this is the step we've taken to purify our church. We urge you to do the same with your congregation. And that way, State College will have a Freemason-free worship network of Christian churches. I was invited by the district deputy grand master. But by the way, how would you like to be district deputy grand master when this is happening in your territory? That's not a fun way to be district deputy grand master. I was invited to take part in a public meeting. They had invited all of the deacons, all of the boards of directors, anyone involved in the government of any church in State College, Pennsylvania, was invited to come to this meeting. They invited me to speak. Dick Fletcher from the Masonic Services Association of America, he was executive secretary at the time. He helped put the entire thing together. Gary, mine escapes me, past Grand Master of Georgia now, was one of the speakers. And so we're talking about Masonry, and we take a break. And a member of the audience comes up and he says, will you allow anyone else to speak at this meeting? And I said, well, we paid for the room, we paid for the microphone, but we're happy to share it if you don't run too long. And he says, I don't need much time, 5 or 10 minutes is all I need. And he said, am I allowed to hand out any supporting documents. Well, by this point, sure you are, because if we don't allow him to hand them out, he's going to stand outside the door and hand them out to everybody as they leave. So they're going to get the material anyway. So he starts handing out the documents, and of course, he gives me one since I'm up there. And I look at it, and it's the alleged Albert Pike quote. So when we reassemble after the break, I said, we have a gentleman in the audience, and he has asked us if he can speak. We're happy to give him 10 minutes of our time to share his thoughts with you. And then he says, I don't understand how Freemasons can claim to be Christians because, and then he reads the quote. He says, here is the facts that they worship Lucifer, or they worship Satan. And so he says, that's why we should all avoid Freemasonry and disfellowshipping them is a good idea. Thank you very much. And he sits down. Well, I went up to the microphone, and this is kind of like a softball over the plate. If the only charge he has against us is the false Albert Pike quote, I can say, I don't believe that you would purposefully defame the good name of a fellow Christian, but that's what you have done. And then I explained to him who Léo Taxil was. I explained to him about Le Frondeur. I said, you can get a copy from the Bibliothèque Nationale. If you like, I'll send you a copy and you can read it yourself. If you don't read French well, I'll be happy to send you a translation. It is a hoax. The author of the book renounced it as a hoax. And so what you're doing is you are repeating a lie to defame your fellow Christians. And he kind of had a sheepish look on his face. And I said, all of this is available to you. And then a fellow from the floor raises his hand and he says, can you take a few other questions? And I said, sure, what's your question? He said, well, do you pray in lodge? And I said, yes, there are two types of prayers that we give. There are the prayers that are printed in our monitor, vouchsafe thine aid, O Almighty Father of the universe, to this our present convention. You've heard that. And so I said, and then there are extemporaneous prayers. If someone is praying for the lodge, he may say, and Brother Bill is in the hospital, please, give special blessings to him. I said, I can't tell you what Brother Bill will say, but we're happy to share with you copies of all of the official prayers. He said, well, when you pray, who do you pray to? I looked at him and I said, to God. And he said, to which God do you pray? And I said, to the God who created the universe. Can you be more specific than that? And I said, sir, it is the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent God who created all of us. I'm afraid I only have a PhD and 2 master's degrees, and my vocabulary is not large enough to define him better than that. He said, okay, let's start. Let me start over. Who do you pray to in lodge? Well, that's the type of thing that we are faced with. And I'd like to end with a paraphrase of H.L. Mencken. Boy, was he a writer. Boy, could he write a good phrase. And the paraphrase is, nobody ever went broke underestimating the intelligence of an anti-Mason. And that's the story of Léo Taxil, of the false Albert Pike Pope, quote of Pope Leo XIII. And it's something you should be aware of if you're going to deal much with the public. And with that, I'd be happy to open the floor to questions, return it to our moderator and take any questions that come in.
Worst Brother S. Brent Morris, thank you so much for that presentation. That was a really great detail of
My pleasure.
The timeline. Brethren and friends, if you have any questions, we have that virtual hand button that you can press and I can call on you, or feel free to put your comments in the chat and I'll try to kick things off. So first of all, I am going to take the screen back, if that's all right.
Fine.
If you
Do I need to do anything in my end?
if you wouldn't mind to stop.
Oh, stop share. I bet that'll do it.
There we go. Thank you very much. All right. I should be back to normal. Okay. So a couple questions. First, well, first of all, your book was introduced to me. One of your books, it says, "Is it true what they say about Freemasonry?" And anybody that hasn't read this book and has questions or curiosities or needs some ammunition, this is an excellent book to have and refer back to. And you go into a lot more detail inside your book about this whole story. Do you know this is a do you know what page or where in more it was in Morals and Dogma where Albert Pike said that? Is that right?
Albert Pike never said it. It's not in Morals Dogma at all.
Where was that quote and footnote?
That footnote is in Woman and Child and Universal Freemasonry by
Okay.
Abel Claren de Larive.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, my mistake then. So what are your thoughts on Morals and Dogma? Because there's a lot of information in there where he talks about Satan and so forth, and I haven't been able to get through it, to be honest with you. So,
Well, first, as you may know, Arturo de Hoyos, I like to call him my unindicted co-conspirator. He went through Morals and Dogma and he annotated. And something like 85 or 90% of Morals and Dogma is quotes from other sources. So if you read the introduction, Albert Pike says, I'm not so much the author of this material as the gatherer or the editor. But I'm sharing this with my brothers. And because this is an informal way of sharing information, I haven't bothered to footnote everything. Well, Art went through and identified the sources of almost everything that's in the book. So the new edition of the second edition of Morals and Dogma that's published by the Supreme Council has all of Art's magnificent research in it. And it also has an index that I prepared. When you index a book, you've got to read it pretty carefully. So I've read Morals and Dogma pretty carefully. And it is Victorian in style, which means it's turgid in its reading. Our style today is to have short, pointed sentences in the present tense, in the active voice, not in passive voice. Pike did not do that. He quotes from all sorts of sources. There doesn't seem to be any reason why one chapter would be so long and another chapter would be so short. So it's an interesting book that talks about morality, and it doesn't ring my chimes. I don't. It's not a book that I turn to for enlightenment. I mean, I like I said, I've indexed it, so I had to read the thing through with enough detail to prepare an index. But it has caused problems because Pike overstated what it did. It's not the source and origin and explanation of the symbolism of all the degrees. It's his personal interpretation. And if you really read it, it's not, a lot of the quotes aren't particularly connected directly to the degrees. So I would give it a C minus, a C or C minus.
okay, great, thank you. Could you go into a little bit of detail regarding the political motivation with the Pope and Freemasonry?
The political motivations?
The political motivations that led to a lot of the divide?
Well, a lot of it was that Garibaldi was trying to unite Italy. And the Pope was holding on to the Papal States. One time, the Pope controlled Rome, and Garibaldi wanted everything turned over to a secular government. So Garibaldi's purposes was to unite Italy into a single secular country. He also happened to be a Freemason. He would have become anything, a knight of Pythias, an odd fellow, if that was going to help him in his goal to unite Italy. The Pope, however, thought that Garibaldi's involvement, because he was a Freemason, showed that the Freemasons were behind the political dismemberment of the Pope. Pope's secular authority was taken away. It's limited to Vatican City. So in the sense that the Pope blamed Garibaldi and through him the Freemasons for what had gone wrong with his secular power, then his papal bull against Freemasonry continued a long line of papal bulls going back to In Eminenti, I believe was the first one back in 1730. And that was some authors think that was an attempt to influence the English to give more political power to the Catholics and take power away from the Church of England. But that's I'm not knowledgeable enough to comment on that. But the Pope said, "Yep, the Masons are still at it. They're trying to do us in. I'm gonna let the world know what they're doing." So the political motive of the Pope was he was ticked off that they'd taken away everything from him but Vatican City.
So do you feel that that continues to be an underlying issue with all the other, what is it, 12 plus popes that continue to condemn Freemasonry?
No, no. I think the arguments against Freemasonry today are much more subtle and nuanced. They are theological arguments. And I think anytime you have an attack against something and it requires a trained theologian to come in and explain to you why the attack is valid, it's not a good argument.
Mhm.
So no, the attacks today are entirely theological, and they have nothing to do with politics.
Okay. There's a question in the chat by David Daughtery. So I'm going to recite it here. His microphones and video is not working. He says, "Thank you, Brother Morris, for another great presentation. This story is well-known tale of misinformation that has been repeated for generations. Even the internet seems to be at least 10 to 1 with misinformation versus accurate information. I think we probably all agree. In an organization that typically remains quiet, how do we overcome this misinformation about the fraternity?"
That's a tough question. What you need to do is you need to be aware of the truth. Art de Hoyos and I wrote the book, Is It True What They Say About Freemasonry? The first edition came out in 92, I think, 93, right when the Southern Baptist Convention was swirling against Freemasonry. And so each chapter after the introduction is devoted to a different anti-Mason.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how you can have the anti-Masons, and as long as they are quoting material that supports them, they give full footnotes, full citations, and full references. Any doctoral dissertation advisor would be proud of that type of citation. When they say nasty things about the Masons, they use quotes showing how evil the Masons are. The quality of the footnote seems to drop to nothing. And so you can, the book is in its fourth edition now. It was the first two editions were published by the Masonic Service Association. Each one we cleaned up the grammatical errors in the previous edition, then added new anti-Masons that we wanted to point out. So that's what we have done. And so I would recommend that book to anybody that wants to know about anti-Masonry. And then once you have your facts, once you have the standard answers to the standard charges, you're in pretty good shape. I mean, I can't tell you the expression on this guy's face when I said that's a hoax. The author of the hoax confessed it. If you don't believe me, you get your own copy from the Bibliothèque Nationale. If you can't get a copy from the Bibliothèque Nationale, I'll send you a copy. Oh, one other thing I did at that meeting, and I was quite proud of that. I held up the copy of Is It True What They Say About Freemasonry? And I said, this is explained in detail in this book. Book sells for $10, I think, is what MSA was selling it for, $10 or $15. Now, this was back in 1990, so that was a little heftier price then.
Mhm.
And I said, here's what I'll do. Anybody that would like a copy of this book, I will send it to you at no charge. All you have to do is to promise me verbally that you will make an extra $10 contribution to the collection plate at your church. So I will help your church increase the size of its collection plate if you want to read a copy of the book, and I'll send it to you at no charge and pay for the postage myself. Didn't have many people take me up on it, but I thought that was a pretty good offer to make.
I think that's a great offer, actually. Brother Cricker, go ahead.
Hello, brother. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Morris. My question might be a simple one. Is there still a anti-Masonic sentiment to our country? And, I don't, to me, I don't think improper, false information on the internet doesn't mean that's anti-Masonic. It just means they're throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. So, but is there an anti-Masonic sentiment in the country or now? And like, what is it?
No, not like it was 30 years ago. The Southern Baptist Convention really stirred up a tempest in a teapot, and you had all kinds of anti-Masons crawl out of the woodwork. There is a group called the Society of Former Masons, I believe. James Dayton Shaw published a book. He had been a Freemason, and I had a lengthy correspondence with his editor, his co-author, and I said, I believe that James Dayton Shaw was only a knight commander of the Court of Honor. I have a program from a banquet held at his lodge, at his Scottish Rite Valley, and it lists him as a KCCH. All you have to do is to tell me what year he was made a 33rd, and then we can look it up. Because and I showed him the transactions of the Supreme Council. Said this lists every 33rd that's acknowledged, and that's made each year, both in the North and the South. And all you have to do is tell me what year it is. And he says, "Well, I completely trust Reverend Shaw. I don't need any confirmation that he was telling the truth. So I don't, no information is going to convince me." So one of in my letter to him, and this is one of the passages in the book that I particularly like. I said, we claim that Reverend Shaw was not a 33rd degree Mason, as he claims. And he claims that being a 33rd gives him a particular insight into the fraternity. And then it's a lengthy letter. And at the end of it, I said, I see two explanations for what has happened. The first explanation is that after Reverend Shaw decided that Freemasonry is evil, his lodge took every newsletter, every bulletin that they sent out to their members, recalled every one of them from every member, and burned them. The Scottish Rite Valley that he was in took every program, every banquet, every banquet program that listed Shaw as a KCCH, and they have destroyed it, or it had listed 33rd degree Masons, and they have destroyed it. Every letter that Shaw wrote when he was master of the lodge, he claimed to be a past master. And it turned out that Florida, where he was from, was one of those states that lists in their proceedings the master, the junior warden, senior warden, secretary, and treasurer of every blessed lodge. And I photocopied every one of those lists for his lodge from the day he joined to the day he left. And I said to my correspondent, this is all the officers. What other lodge did he belong to? And so in my letter to him, I said, well, the Grand Lodge of Florida must have withdrawn every proceedings that they sent out, reprinted them, and then sent out new proceedings with Reverend Shaw's name missing. And I went on and listed all the other things that had to happen. I said, that's explanation number one. Explanation number two, he lied. I'm more than happy to leave it up to the readers to decide which explanation makes the most sense. And then that was the end of my letter. So I was sort of proud of that. But the good news is there's no organized anti-Masonic movement of any particular sort.
Would you say was that what they call Occam's razor? Is when the most simple explanation
the simplest explanation is probably the right explanation. That's Occam's razor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave a particularly lengthy list of things that had to be recalled, destroyed, and reprinted. And so I was pleased with that. But by the way, I'm going to interject right now. I've got some messages from brothers that said, can you please send me a copy? I don't know how to save this information in Zoom. If you would like a copy of the Taxil Confession, go to the Scottish Rite Research Society page, Google Scottish Rite Research Society. Go to that page. There is a sub-page on that website that lists several articles that you can download for free. One of them is the translation of Léo Taxil's confession that he made in Le Frondeur in April of 1897. So I don't know how. I'm looking over here at my list of messages that I've gotten in. I do not know how to copy that and get it back to you. So very simple. Google Scottish Rite Research Society, go to the homepage, and then find the material you can download. And Taxil's confession and the article, the explanatory article preceding it, is there for the free, is freely available. Anyone can download.
Mhm. Yeah, I was trying to look forward as well. If any brother on tonight can find that link and share it in the chat, that'd be great. So this is a vague general question, but obviously when we talk about anti-Masonry and everything else that goes with it, there's always a discussion or something comes up regarding Illuminati. And you talk about this in your book as well. But I'd just be very curious to get your quick overview of the Illuminati and its relation to Freemasonry, and for anybody out there that still believes that.
Well, the Illuminati was a brainchild of Weishaupt. He was in Bavaria. He was a Freemason. This was an idealized organization that was going to change the world for the better. And you had to be a Freemason first, and then you could be invited to join the Illuminati. And it was very quickly found out by the authorities, and Adam Weishaupt had to hightail it out of town. And that was the end of it. And then it reappeared later as a convenient whipping boy of the Illuminati, or the evil forces behind it. No one's ever been able to show that they had an existence of more than a few years when they were originally created. It's one of those things that constantly appears among the anti-Masons. Well, the Illuminati are behind it. They're the ones that run the Masons. And at some point, you kind of shrug your shoulders and you say, look, we publish the annual proceedings. I cannot tell you how boring it is to read the proceedings of a Grand Lodge, but they're there. Every debate that was held, are we going to have, how are we going to cook the green beans? I mean, there you go. That debate will be in the proceedings. And so we're an organization that is putting that much camouflage out there to keep our connection to the Illuminati secret. No one can find an address, a phone number, a name, an actual person. At some point you say, what's the point of arguing with you? And so yeah, the Illuminati are out there, and they're always the bad guys, and they say, well, you're not a high enough degree Mason. I had one anti-Mason say, well, why should I believe you? You're not a high enough Mason. I said, okay. I have lunch with the Grand Commander a couple of times a month. My office is 20 feet from his office. I see him on a daily basis, and I'm not sure how you get much higher than that. But if you find someone that's higher and you trust, go for it. Knock yourself out. And by the way, I found the website for the Scottish Rite Research Society. It's scottishriteresearch.com. Just as simple as that. Scottish, no spaces, no periods. scottishriteresearch.com. That will take you to the page. They have publications, and there are two publications, or Heredom, which are the transactions and the plumb line. You click on Heredom, and then there is a list of articles that you can download. Let's see, the Spurious Rites of Memphis and Moraine, Henry Andrew Franklin and his Masonic manuscripts, early newspaper accounts of Prince Hall Freemasonry. Oh dear, I just told you that Taxil's, oh, I feel silly. It's not, it's supposed to be there.
We found it from another source. So
you found it from another source. You're right.
There's a link in the chat, brethren, so check that out.
Excellent. Okay. Like I said, where's my 12-year-old grandchildren to help me out with the computer when I need
them? Brethren, I know you have a lot more questions. This is a very interesting topic, and for anyone, I'm sure you've all felt uncomfort at some point with someone who's not a Mason and realized you were a Mason. So this is the time to bring up any questions. Worship brother, what would you say about oaths? We've had some men in our fraternity that have come through that have had a bit of a concern regarding oaths specifically. And I'm just curious what you would say to a brother that has concern swearing an oath with our degrees.
Well, that becomes in Christianity, that's known as a juring and a non-juring Christian. A juring Christian is willing to take an oath, a non-juring Christian does not. And if your understanding of your religious obligations, let your yes be yes and your no be no. You don't need to qualify things any more than that. If that's your understanding, and you would serve on a jury without taking oath of office, if you would join a college fraternity or sorority without taking their membership pledge, then my hat's off to you. I don't happen to interpret the Bible instructions that way, but I admire you for your devotion and your consistency, and I don't think you would enjoy being a Mason.
Mhm.
And that's what I would say to them about the oaths.
Yeah. No, that's great.
It's a solemn promise to obey the rules of the organization, and lots of people have not had a problem.
Yeah.
But if you do, then my hat's off to you. And I don't think you'd be comfortable as a Mason.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you made it really simple. It's up to interpretation.
Yep.
And each man is allowed to make his own decisions. So hopefully the decision that any man is making is based on facts and not lies, first and foremost. And then it's whatever you feel is right or wrong. And I think there's room for both. So we have a question. Gerald, I'll get to you in a moment. Worship Brother Dan, I think you have a couple questions. Go ahead.
I do. Worshipful Brother Brian, thank you. Worshipful Brother Brent, thank you for a splendid presentation this evening. I've got a couple of questions for you. I'll give them to you in chronological order. In 1885, Taxil is excommunicated from the church, but in 1887, he has found repentance, and he actually has a meeting with the Pope at that point in time.
That's
Did
right.
the Pope recognize him as being the man who had published these pornographic works about him?
I think so. I mean, the Pope has enough staff to say this is the guy that was writing the pornographic books about you, whom you earlier excommunicated. He's now confessed his sins. He's been absolved. He did a year's penance, I think. And when he confessed his sins, he didn't say it explicitly, but he let the confessor think that he had murdered somebody or had killed somebody. And so the Pope was aware of who he was. The Pope knew that he had converted back to Catholicism, and he was happy to help the Pope in his attacks against Freemasonry. And so they showed him the books that Taxil had written. His first one, the 3-Point Brothers, and that refers to the triangle of dots that I think the French Masons were the first to use it for Masonic abbreviations. So instead of A period, F period, ampersand, A period, M period, AF and AM, they would put A triangle, and they would put in the 3 dots, 1, 2, 3. And that's a mathematical symbol for therefore. If you ever take a course in symbolic logic, that's the sort of the universal symbol for therefore. So if you're writing a proof, and you want to put therefore in there. So yeah, I think the Pope was aware of who Taxil was, but was told that he had converted and been restored to membership in the church.
So after his second excommunication, did the church ever formally acknowledge that this was all a hoax?
When you say that the church, de la Rive, I believe, was a priest. If he was not a priest, I think he was a monk. He was, in that sense, a church official. And de la Rive, who was the author of the book that has the false quote in it, says that everything about Diana Vaughan doesn't exist. You can assume that it doesn't exist. I don't think the church ever came out and formally said, boy, we were snookered on this one. Freemasons are still a bunch of SOBs, but in this case, anything to do with Taxil is part of a giant hoax, and we've kicked him out of the church a second time. We're not going to give him a third chance. That did not happen.
Worship Brother Dan, do you have any follow-up? Where's Brother Gerald? Go ahead.
Yeah, going back to the issue with the oaths, the thing that I have heard most often about the oaths are the penalties, which are obviously allegorical, and nobody's going to be murdered for this oath. Is there something else about the oath that is problematic that doesn't come to my mind?
Well, for example, there are certain denominations, Christian denominations that do not swear oaths. I think the Mennonite and the Amish are among those. So if they're called to testify in court, they will solemnly affirm that what they're about to say is the truth, but they will not swear that it is the truth.
So it's the a religious belief that there's something wrong with oaths in and of themselves. Then
Yes, and I'm not enough of a theologian or church scholar to know which denominations have that position.
well,
But it's-
as an attorney, I'm aware that you can uh, substitute for it being an oath, but
Okay,
I guess the idea there is that in that particular domination, the only thing that you swear to is Almighty Himself. So
yeah, yes, and I'd be even uncomfortable claiming that was the right interpretation because it's very subtle. It's something that almost never comes up. You don't think about it with a college sorority and its members taking an oath of membership. But when you join the Masons, there's a solemn oath taken on the Bible, and people claim that you shouldn't be taking oaths if you're a Christian, and the response is, "Huh, never really thought about that." Uh, and then they claim that it's an inappropriate oath to take on the Bible, and on and on and on. And my reaction to that is, if you have difficulty with swearing an oath, you'd be uncomfortable being a Mason, and you shouldn't join.
yeah, well, thank you for that clarification and for your whole presentation, Brother Morris. Thought it was outstanding, and I just in my lodge, the only place I really hear about it is sometimes we have guys that are going through, particularly in our classes after the entered apprentice degree, and they're worried about this really gory sounding oath, and we explain to them that's allegorical, and it's not something that that would ever happen. I was curious though, and I understand the explanation that you're giving, and thank you very much for it.
Certainly, thank you for your kind words.
So I just want to debunk maybe one or two more things since we're on the same topic.
All right.
Religion. If somebody says Freemasonry is a religion, no, it's not. Yes, it is. What's your response?
Well, my response is the definition of religion is pretty much an individual topic. If you believe that the Boy Scouts are a religion, then there's no doubt that the Freemasons are a religion also. If you're not willing to accept the Boy Scouts as a religion, then I think you're being cynical and a little two-faced in calling the Freemasons a religion, but not the Boy Scouts. And so I respectfully disagree with you.
But it says that religion which all men agree. Well, what does that mean then?
That doesn't say that we have that religion. That is the religion that we support, that religion in which all good men agree.
Mm.
And if I'm asked to explain that, it is that God created the universe and all that's in it. And anything much about that becomes detail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the type of argument you'd get from someone who's already made up their mind.
Right.
And they're trying to trap you with a trick question.
Good point. Good point. Good point. Masonic Bible. Is there such a thing?
Well, yes and no. There's the presentation Bible,
Yeah.
that has bound into it. And I'm sure you've seen these. I'm not sure the commercial Bible printers that put out that Bible, but it has contained within it some pages with questions and answers about Masonry.
Right.
I think maybe H.L. Haywood wrote that information about a century ago, and so there's information about Freemasonry, as accurate as the author was able to make it. That's bound into the book.
Yeah.
There's also a place where you can put down the dates you got your degrees. I mean, I'm sure all of you have seen and received books like that. And so it is one of the various King James versions of the Bible.
Yeah.
And there are many. There's the 1611 version, and then it has been retranslated and tweaked. And no, we can say this a little bit better. And so it's a King James version of the Bible with a section bound into it. But that's the only thing that makes it different is the fact there's probably a square and compasses stamped on the cover, and a few pages with Masonic historical information.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my Masonic Bible is a King James version. So, right. All right, one or two more questions, and then we'll take them off the hot seat. Brother Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to tell everybody that I posted the link in the chats to what we've been talking about, so you can find it there. I did go out and found it, and I posted it, so it's there for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brother Bruce.
You're welcome.
Do you have grandchildren back there helping you?
No, I grew up doing key punching back in high school, and my first computer was a Commodore 64. So I've been with computers a long time.
Good for you, brother.
Thank you. All right, Worship Brother Bizak, I'd like to give you the last word, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. Worshipful Brother Morris, excellent and outstanding presentation. Thank you. There's
Brother Bizak, as always, your insight is wonderful. Spot on.
There's not as many ridiculous theories about what happened to Taxil as there is William Morgan, but can you tell us what we know about what did happen to Taxil after the confession?
Well, Taxil lived a very quiet life, and he went back to publishing pornographic works. He reprinted the Amusing Bible, and I think that was where he had twists and turns on various stories from the Bible. And he lived a very quiet existence, and then died. I mean, once you confess to a hoax of that size, you really have lost all credibility. So he he had no credibility left.
Thank you, Brent.
All right. Worship Brother Brent, thank you so much for your time tonight, your wisdom. Appreciate it very much. Brothers, anyone that does not have a copy of Is It True What They Say About Freemasonry or any of Brent's books, excellent reads. Strong.
Worshipful Brother Brian, may I squeeze in one last question?
If you have to, yes.
I have to. It's weighing heavily on me now. Was this a profitable enterprise for Taxil?
He didn't get rich off of it, but that's how he made a living. He wrote these books and published them. They were pulp fiction. They were cheap books that were designed to have lurid covers and people snatch up. Every now and then I'll get bored on the internet and I'll start following clickbait, and it says well-known restaurant about to close. And you say, oh my gosh, who's and they show in the background someplace it looks just like maybe a McDonald's, or maybe it looks like a restaurant that you go to. I want to read this article, and it's clickbait. That's what they call it. It's written in such a way that you're compelled to click on that link and see what's there, and that's the way it's written. And every now and then I will play the game with clickbait, and I'll read an article and follow it. And that was the type of thing Taxil was doing. He was writing clickbait of the day, these cheap books that were quickly printed, cheaply printed. They wanted to have lurid titles. And you saw that picture of the confessions of a or the debaucheries of a confessor, I think, that had the topless woman on the front cover. And so what a lurid book to see. And you're about to take a train trip. I need something to kill a couple hours time. Oh, this looks juicy. And you snatch it up. So that was the way Taxil made his living, writing books like that. And he didn't get wealthy, but he put food on the table.
Good question, Dan. Good question. All right. Brethren, our next education will be Monday, August 26th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Our presenter will be Worshipful Brother Rich Hansen from Kentucky. He will be speaking on the topic of Masonic initiation. So it will be a great topic to explore. Recommend you joining us for that meeting on August 26th. August 26th. Gerald, you got that?
Yeah, could you spell his name for me,
Sure.
please?
Rich, R-I-C-H, Hansen, H-A-N-S-O-N.
All right, I did have it right. And the topic again?
Masonic initiation.
Sounds pretty basic.
Good deal. Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to it.
Great. All right, a few more slides, brothers. We'll let you go for the evening. Ignore the mascot on the screen, but he's the one that recorded the video. So again, I want to remind everyone that if you're interested in attending our festive board and conference, don't delay any longer. This will fill up. We only have so much space, and hopefully we won't have to try to move rooms for a bigger audience. Again, this is our 12th year. The Rubicon Masonic Society has conducted its annual festive board in Lexington, Spindletop Hall. If you've not been to Spindletop Hall, you're in for a treat. It's absolutely gorgeous. Our goal is to offer fine dining, fellowship, songs, toast, Masonic education. So we strongly encourage you to join us. Again, it's September 27th. And the topic of the conference is the shapers of our ritual. We ask that you please RSVP no later than September 13th. Seating is limited. Cost for one event is $100, or a ticket to both events is $175. So again, check that out. The link is on your screen, rubiconmasonicsociety.com/conference 2024. And if you have any curiosity on what the conference education would be like, you can view last year's conference. So this is our conference from last year, our presenters and speakers. It's available on YouTube. Go check it out. It's about 2.5 hours long. It's pretty lengthy, so you might want to watch it in multiple settings, but be sure to check that out. I also encourage everyone, if you're looking for further light in masonry, to be sure to visit thecraftsman.org. The Craftsman website is compiled by our good friend and Masonic author, Worship Brother John Bizak. And he put this information together with educational materials, papers, articles, essays, books, commentaries on all sorts of Masonic topics from well-known members of the fraternity who are actively engaged in their lodges and educational activities. So feel free to check out his website, thecraftsman.org. It's 100% complimentary, and we hope you enjoy, except for any books that he's selling, of course. And on that topic, normally I would ask Worship Brother Bizak to just give a brief shout out to the Philalethes. However, Worship Brother Morris, would you tell us a little bit about the Philalethes Society for anyone that might be interested? And you're muted, brother. Brother Brent, your microphone is muted.
I removed the little red line. Can you hear me better now?
You gotcha. That's perfect.
Thank you for reminding me to unmute my microphone. The Philalethes Society, I think, was originally formed back in the late 1920s. A Grand Master did not like what someone had written and came down on him, and so they created the Philalethes Society as a place where you could publish. I've had a Grand Master come down on me, so I can sympathize with that. It started publishing the Philalethes magazine back in the early 1950s, I believe. It is edited by Sean Eyre, who is a brilliant editor. If you like Masonic articles that are not just short and uplifting, but in fact are detailed with facts and figures and citations, and it's scholarly articles. The Philadelphia Society is a great organization to belong to. Magazine comes out quarterly. It costs $50 a year. It's I suggest if you do nothing else, you get a sample copy of the magazine. I think you can write to the Philadelphians and get a copy. But I believe that the URL of the Philadelphians is freemasonry.org. When URLs were being handed out, someone on the Philadelphia Society had the brilliant foresight to snatch up freemasonry.org. And I think that is the Philadelphia's URL. So yeah, if you like in-depth articles about Freemasonry, you can't go wrong with the Philadelphians. I endorse it enthusiastically.
Great, excellent. I echo that endorsement. Thank you. Brothers, we have transactions from the Rubicon Masonic Society. You can find those on Amazon, or you can go to rubiconmasonicsociety.com/transactions. Rubicon is a nonprofit organization, so these proceeds go to help our mission of providing education to you. On that note, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, watch the Masonic Table documentary. It's also available on Amazon. If you have watched it, give it a good 5-star rating. We appreciate that. This is a documentary that will be somewhat timeless, we hope and believe, and we just want to keep reminding everyone that maybe hasn't heard about it to check it out. Brethren, are there any other final comments before we proceed to close this evening? Any at all? Worst Brother Brent, thank you. Thank you
My
very much
pleasure.
for your time this evening. We really appreciate it. Worst Brother Allen, will you please do the honors of delivering a closing devotion?
Brothers, Grand Architect of the universe, we thank you for your presence among us this evening. You are the source of all knowledge and understanding, and we seek your continued blessing upon us as we strive to live our lives as just and upright men. We pray for the injured, the ill, and the recently departed. We pray that you will comfort them during their time of illness or grief. These things we pray in your holy name. Amen.
So mote it be.
Thank you. Brethren, I want to thank you all very much for joining us. If you know of any others that might be interested in this education, ask them to RSVP, rubiconmasonicsociety.com/RSVP. Next meeting is August 26th, 7 p.m. Until next time, brothers, may we always be happy to meet, sorry to part, and happy to meet again. Thank you for being with us tonight, and have a great evening.